The city of Arendor shone like a jewel in the void of space. Towering spires of glass and steel caught the light from distant suns, reflecting 1,000 colors that danced across the orbital platforms. From the surface of the planet below to the orbital palace above, the empire of House Veyron projected power, order, and a quiet sense of untouchable authority. Yet within that glittering beauty, danger always lingered in the shadows, and the human who had come to guard its most precious jewel had no idea how quickly he would face it. Kale moved with measured steps through the corridors of the palace. His uniform was simple, a ceremonial armor meant more for display than battle, but he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had faced the unknown countless times. Humans were not renowned for spacefaring skill in the Galactic Council, nor were they seen as warriors of great renown. Most alien races thought of them as fragile, expendable, and perhaps even cute. Kale had long ago learned to ignore their assumptions and rely only on what humans had in abundance: adaptability, courage, and quick thinking. Today was meant to be routine. He was assigned to the ceremonial guard for Princess Lyra, the young heir of House Veyron. The princess had a reputation for grace and intelligence, and the nobles whispered that she might be the most promising ruler in decades. Kale had no illusions about the dangerous attention that came with such a title. He had trained for weeks to anticipate threats, to move before danger could strike, but nothing could truly prepare him for what was about to happen.
The gala was magnificent.
Delegates from across the galaxy had arrived, representing empires that spanned star systems. Elegant gowns and sharp suits shimmered under the artificial sunlight of the orbital palace. The air hummed with conversation in a dozen alien tongues, some musical and flowing, others harsh and guttural. Kale walked along the perimeter, eyes scanning for any hint of trouble. His human instincts were sharp, every muscle coiled, every nerve alert. He noticed it first as a subtle ripple in the crowd, a disturbance almost too slight for anyone else to see. A shadow detached itself from a group of dignitaries, moving with a strange silence. Kale's pulse quickened. Humans were not known for subtlety, but instinctively he had learned to trust his senses in ways aliens did not. He knew something was wrong. The assassin struck in a heartbeat, a blur of motion, a plasma blade that hissed through the air like a living thing, aimed directly at Princess Lyra. The crowd screamed, and time seemed to slow. Kale did not hesitate. Without a thought, he threw himself between the princess and the blade. Pain tore through his shoulder as the plasma grazed him, but his body shielded the princess completely. He tackled the attacker, using sheer strength and momentum to slam them into a containment field. The energy net flared, holding the assailant in place. The crowd gasped, some stumbling backward in shock, others frozen with awe. Humans had never been expected to act so decisively, so violently, and yet with such precision. Kale stood, panting, one hand still pressed to the burning flesh of his shoulder. Princess Lyra's eyes were wide with shock, but there was gratitude in them as well. "You!" she began, her voice trembling. But Kale shook his head, brushing the words away. There was no time for thanks. Danger was always the first language humans understood. Kale turned to see the council rushing forward, alien faces twisted in surprise and anger. Empress Salara, the queen and mother of the princess, arrived last, her presence commanding silence. She was tall, regal, and carried an aura of authority that few could challenge. Her eyes locked on Kale, and in that instant, he felt the weight of every word unspoken. "You are human," she said, her voice calm but sharp, cutting through the chaos. "And you have acted with remarkable skill." Kale nodded, keeping his breathing steady despite the pain.
"Just doing my duty, Your Majesty."
The queen's lips pressed into a thin line. She examined him with a gaze that seemed to pierce his very soul. For a moment, Kale thought she would simply dismiss him, send him on his way as she did with most human soldiers. Instead, she made a decision that would change his life forever. "You will remain within the palace," she said. Her tone left no room for argument, for study, for observation. Your actions cannot be left unexplained, and your capabilities may serve the Empire in ways we have yet to understand. He had expected a commendation, perhaps a chance to return to his unit. Instead, the Queen had made it clear that his life was now tied to this palace, to its politics, to the safety of the royal family. He opened his mouth to protest, but the Queen's eyes held him in place. He understood immediately. Arguing would do no good. Humans were strong, but in this court, strength alone did not matter. As the crowd dispersed, whispers followed him. Aliens speculated about the humans' abilities. Some were fearful, some impressed, but all recognized that Kale had done something no one else could. He had reacted not out of orders or training alone, but instinct. Humans could surprise even the most calculating minds. That was a fact that would not be forgotten anytime soon. Kale's first days in the palace were a mixture of admiration, suspicion, and subtle hostility. Guards and servants eyed him warily. Some tried to challenge him, testing his reactions, while others offered reluctant respect. Every move he made was scrutinized, every conversation noted. He realized quickly that the Queen's decree was more than just a restriction. It was a trial. He was being studied, his every decision, his reflexes, his thoughts, weighed and measured against centuries of galactic experience. He explored the palace, learning the layout, observing patrols, and noting potential vulnerabilities. Despite the luxurious halls and gleaming surfaces, Hale saw signs of deeper unrest. Small devices that could monitor movement, secret passages for escape or intrusion, even subtle shifts in the behavior of palace staff, all suggested that assassins were not finished. Danger lingered like a silent predator. Humans might have been underestimated, but Kale knew that in this court, survival depended on awareness, cunning, and courage. Princess Lyra occasionally visited him in the barracks assigned to human guards. She was polite, curious, and intelligent, asking questions about Earth, about humans, and about Kale himself. He answered cautiously, careful not to reveal vulnerabilities, but a bond began to form. She admired his decisiveness and bravery, while he recognized her insight and wisdom beyond her years. The connection was not romantic. It was respect forged in the fires of survival. Kale's shoulder healed slowly, though the scar would remain as a reminder of the blade that had sought the princess. Training resumed in secret, his exercises designed to sharpen reflexes, increase speed, and anticipate attacks. The palace was a labyrinth of corridors, observation rooms, and hidden threats, and Kale moved through it like a predator, learning, adapting, and improving. One evening, while practicing in the observation hall, he overheard a conversation between two diplomats. They spoke in hushed tones, words laced with suspicion and fear.
"The humans are unpredictable," one said. "Kale may be more dangerous than we imagined."
"He has instincts no algorithm can replicate. The Queen's decision may have saved the princess, but he is now a factor we cannot control." Kale smiled faintly. They had no idea that humans thrived in unpredictability, while aliens relied on logic, procedure, and protocol. Humans could improvise, could act without fear, could turn desperation into advantage. That was the edge he carried, unseen but potent, and it would only grow sharper with time. Yet despite his growing awareness and skill, Kale understood one truth. He was still a prisoner in many ways. The palace, for all its beauty and grandeur, was a cage gilded in gold. He could not leave freely. Every step he took was observed, every word, every action measured, and the Queen's eyes were always upon him, a reminder that his life had become entwined with something far larger than himself. He remembered the words of his old commander back on Earth. A human can survive anything if they refuse to give up, refuse to be predictable, and refuse to bow to fear. In that moment, Kale realized that those words were not just advice. They were a prophecy. Here, among creatures who had dismissed humanity for centuries, he would prove that humans were not weak, expendable, or irrelevant. And the first test of that truth was only just beginning. Kale quickly realized that the palace was more than a beautiful structure of steel and glass. It was a living organism of politics, secrets, and constant observation. Every corridor had eyes, every meeting had hidden agendas, and every smile could mask danger. The longer he stayed, the more he understood that humans, despite their reputation for unpredictability, were being tested like lab subjects. The Queen did not speak to him often, but when she did, it was with precision. Her questions were not idle curiosity. They were designed to probe, to measure, to understand the limits of his mind and body. "Why did you choose to move without hesitation?" she asked one morning, her eyes glinting with calculation. Kale shrugged, careful not to give offense. "Because hesitation could cost a life, Your Majesty. That is all any human soldier knows." She regarded him for a long moment, then nodded slightly. Her approval was faint, almost imperceptible, but Kale understood it as a small victory. Humans were simple in their ways, but extraordinary in their instinct. They adapted, they survived, and sometimes they could change the outcome of events that even the most advanced alien empires could not foresee. Life in the palace was a mixture of training, observation, and cautious exploration. Kale was confined mostly to the human guard barracks, but he was allowed to move through certain public corridors. In every hallway, he noted the subtle signs of tension, guards whispering to one another, strange devices humming softly in the walls, and diplomats who glanced at him with suspicion or awe. Kale understood immediately that his presence had shifted the balance of the court. Aliens had always seen humans as weak, expendable, or irrelevant, and now their assumptions were being challenged. The palace staff began to observe him closely. Some were friendly, curious about Earth, about human culture, and about Kale himself. Others were cold, calculating, and clearly distrustful. Kale responded the only way he knew how, with professionalism, alertness, and a quiet confidence. He did not need allies to survive, but he understood that information and subtle influence were weapons as sharp as any blade. One day, while patrolling a restricted corridor near the observation towers, Kale noticed a faint vibration under his boots. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but his instincts told him it was not natural. He crouched, listening. The vibration increased in rhythm, and he realized that it was a hidden mechanism, likely a surveillance or attack device, embedded in the floor for someone who knew how to trigger it. Kale did not panic. Instead, he traced the pattern with careful steps, avoiding pressure plates and sensors, until he reached a maintenance hatch. Using tools he carried for emergencies, he disabled the device. It was a small victory, but it confirmed his suspicion. Assassins were not finished. The palace still held threats, and he was right in their path. Princess Lyra visited him that evening. She did not announce herself, but entered quietly, leaning against the doorway with her hands clasped. Kale straightened immediately. Humans instinctively measured presence, movement, and intent, and he knew when someone entered the room. "You seem different," Lyra said softly. "I have seen other guards. They follow orders. They move when told. But you move before danger even arrives." "I have never seen that before." Kyle allowed himself a small smile. "Humans have survived a lot, Your Highness. We learn to see danger before it sees us. That is how we survive."
Lyra nodded, her eyes thoughtful.
"I wish my people could see that. They think humans are weak."
"But you are something else." Kale shrugged modestly. "I am only one human. I do what I can. That is all any of us can do." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft alarm from the security console. Kyle reacted instantly, moving to the source. A minor drone had triggered in one of the observation towers, its sensors scanning the corridors for unauthorized activity. While it was likely harmless, Kale noted the pattern. It was no accident. Someone was testing the response. watching to see how quickly he would act. Kale disabled the drone and reported the incident to the captain of the guard. His human instincts had prevented a small test from becoming a real threat. Yet the subtle warning lingered in his mind. In the palace, even minor incidents were part of a larger game. Every movement, every reaction could be watched, measured, and used against him or the royal family. The queen summoned him to a private chamber several days later. The room was vast and dimly lit, filled with holographic displays that projected star maps, strategic data, and surveillance records. Kale stepped inside, bowing slightly as protocol demanded. "Kale," she began, her tone calm but unmistakably commanding. "You have shown courage and skill beyond what I expected from a human. Yet courage alone is not enough. You must also understand the politics of this palace. Every ally, every adversary, every gesture carries weight. One misstep, and even your strength may not save you." Kale nodded. "I understand, Your Majesty." "I will do my best to learn and adapt." Solara studied him for a moment, then spoke again. "Good. Because the threats do not stop at the ceremonial gala. There are whispers of factions within the Empire that seek to destabilize the court. Some would see the princess harmed, some would see the queen weakened. Your presence here is no accident."
You are both shield and symbol. Kale felt the weight of her words.
He had been confined to the palace, studied like an experiment, and yet he realized that his role was far more crucial than mere observation. Humans had often been underestimated, dismissed as weak or naive. Here, in the heart of a galactic empire, Kale's human traits, courage, ingenuity, adaptability, were suddenly invaluable. He was not expendable, he was essential. In the following weeks, Kale began to train in secret. The palace provided basic instruction, but he went further, using his human ingenuity to improve techniques, anticipate attacks, and develop strategies that no alien military could predict. He crafted improvised tools and weapons, used the palace layout to his advantage, and even trained in stealth and surveillance techniques that were not part of his official duties. As he trained, Kale noticed a subtle shift among the palace staff. Some began to respect him openly, acknowledging his skill and instincts. Others became wary, muttering about how unpredictable humans could be. He realized that he had not only survived the first attack, but he had begun to change the way others perceived humans. Once considered weak, expendable, or amusing, humans now carried the weight of fear and admiration in equal measure. The princess often observed him during these sessions. She asked questions, offered insights, and even suggested exercises that tested both his mind and body. Kyle found himself appreciating her perspective. Unlike many nobles, she did not rely solely on protocol or procedure. She valued instinct, creativity, and judgment, qualities humans excelled at. In her quiet way, she encouraged him to embrace his human nature rather than suppress it, reminding him that strength could take many forms. One evening, Kale overheard a conversation between two alien dignitaries. They spoke in hushed tones near the corridors, not noticing his presence.
"The human is unpredictable," one said. "He may act in ways we cannot anticipate."
The queen's decision to keep him close may be wise, or dangerous. The other nodded slowly. "We have underestimated humans for centuries. Perhaps we were wrong to do so. His actions could alter the balance in this court." Kyle smiled faintly. Unseen in the shadows, that was exactly what he intended. Humans thrived in unpredictability, while aliens relied on algorithms, logic, and established patterns. Humans could improvise, react instinctively, and turn desperate moments into victories. That was his edge, and he intended to use it. Despite his growing confidence, Kale understood that he was still confined. The palace was both a home and a cage, its golden walls concealing countless eyes and silent threats. He could not leave, not yet. Every step he took, every choice he made, was observed. And yet, Kale found a strange sense of purpose in this constraint. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a symbol, a human in a galaxy that had long dismissed his species. As he stood on the balcony one night, looking out at the swirling stars, Kale felt the quiet determination settle in his chest. Wild's stage is definite. He would survive this palace. He would protect the princess. And more importantly, he would prove that humans were not weak, expendable, or irrelevant. They were capable of courage, ingenuity, and strength beyond measure, and in a universe that had never taken them seriously, that truth would make all the difference. Weeks had passed since Kale had first thrown himself in front of Princess Lyra. The palace had grown almost unbearably tense. Guards walked the halls with tighter discipline, and whispers of conspiracies floated behind closed doors. Kale had learned to read every subtle glance, every hushed conversation, every shift in posture. His human instincts were sharper than ever, and yet, even he sensed something bigger looming. One evening, while on patrol near the palace archives, Kale noticed a series of unusual patterns in the security logs. Drones had been rerouted slightly off their normal paths, small locks had been tampered with but not opened, and some guards had inexplicably changed their shifts. It was subtle, almost invisible to anyone else, but Kale's eyes, trained to spot anomalies, caught the pattern immediately. Someone was planning something. He reported his findings to the captain of the guard. The captain, an alien with long silver limbs and eyes that glowed faintly, frowned.
You may be imagining patterns, human. The palace is large.
Things get misaligned naturally. Kale shook his head.
No, I've seen this before.
The shifts, the drones, the locks. Someone is testing our defenses. They are looking for a weak point. The captain hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Very well.
We will investigate, but do not overstep your bounds, human.
Kale knew the captain meant well, but in his experience, relying on procedures alone could be deadly. Humans survived because they acted, not because they waited for someone else to act. Kale decided he could not wait. He began to observe the palace more closely, mapping potential routes, predicting likely ambush points, and noting every possible hiding place for an intruder. The first sign came in the middle of the night. Kyle was walking through a service corridor when he noticed a faint vibration in the walls, a mechanical hum that was off rhythm from the palace's usual energy flow. He paused, crouching to inspect it. There, hidden behind a panel, was a small device capable of emitting high-frequency energy, likely intended to disable guards or create confusion during an attack. Kale's mind raced. He carefully removed the device and stowed it in a secure bag he carried. His heart was steady, his hands precise. Humans could remain calm under pressure. That trait, so often underestimated, would give him an edge in the confrontation to come. The next day, Kale presented his findings to Princess Lyra in a private session. She listened intently, her brow furrowed in concern.
You think someone wants the queen harmed? She asked quietly.
Kale nodded. It's possible. And if the queen is the target, the palace itself is part of the plan. We have to consider every angle, every corridor, every window and hatch. Lyra studied him, clearly impressed. You think like a soldier, but also like a strategist. You see possibilities others do not. Kale allowed a small smile. We have to, otherwise we do not survive. The queen called him personally a few days later, her voice calm but with an undercurrent of urgency. Kale, I have received troubling intelligence.
There are factions within our empire that would see me removed.
If I fall, the consequences for House Veyron and for the galaxy would be catastrophic. I need someone who can act where others may fail.
Kale straightened. I am ready, Your Majesty.
Solara studied him closely, measuring not just his courage, but his judgment, his adaptability. You will lead a covert operation to secure the palace and uncover this threat. You will not have full authority over the palace guards. You will not have every tool you might desire. You will have only your instincts, your mind, and your humanity. Do you understand?" "I understand," Kale replied. He knew that the Queen was testing him as much as the palace's enemies were. Humans could succeed where algorithms and protocols failed. It was time to show what humans were capable of. Over the next few days, Kale moved like a shadow. He observed, questioned, and gathered intelligence without attracting attention. He noted suspicious movements, mapped hidden passages, and began to piece together the network of operatives planning the attack. His human intuition guided him in ways no algorithm could. Small details, a misplaced tray, an altered schedule, a guard looking at him too often, were all clues he used to anticipate danger. Then the first strike came. It was a minor incident. A servant's cart tipped over, sending supplies crashing through a hallway. But Kale noticed immediately that the pattern of movement suggested something more. He followed the trail quietly, using his knowledge of the palace layout. In a small storage chamber, he found the first of the intruders. 2 alien assassins armed with plasma knives, clearly intending to strike key palace officials later that night. Kale acted instantly. Humans were quick to adapt, and in a confined space, his reflexes were unmatched. He used the element of surprise, taking down the first assailant with a well-aimed strike, then using his environment to subdue the second. Within minutes, both were restrained and incapacitated. By the time the captain of the guard arrived, the intruders were securely contained. Kale explained the situation calmly, detailing how the assassins had infiltrated the palace. The captain, though initially skeptical, could not deny the skill and foresight Kale had shown. "You man," he said slowly. "Your instincts, they are remarkable."
I have never seen anything like it.
Kale allowed himself a moment to breathe. This was only the beginning. The intercepted intruders were likely a small fraction of the threat. The main attack, aimed at the Queen herself, had yet to arrive. That evening, Kale briefed Princess Lyra. Her expression was grave, but her eyes shone with determination. "You are saving lives that cannot be replaced," she said softly.
Humans, you are stronger than anyone realizes. Kyle nodded. I just act.
Humans act when it matters. The palace tension escalated as Kale prepared for the next attack. He set traps, monitored patrols, and anticipated likely strike points. When the main assault came, it was swift, precise, and deadly. A group of elite assassins infiltrated the palace through a hidden maintenance hatch, bypassing many security measures. The chaos began in the central corridors, alarms blaring, guards rushing in disarray. Kale moved like a force of nature. He intercepted the first wave, using his knowledge of the palace layout to separate and confuse the intruders. His human instincts allowed him to predict their movements, anticipate their strikes, and use improvised weapons to turn their own tactics against them. One by one, the assassins were subdued, often before they could realize how vulnerable they had become. In the control chamber, Kale noticed a figure attempting to reach the Queen's private quarters. The lead assassin was faster and stronger than the others, trained to bypass any obstacle. Kale pursued, his determination unwavering. The chase led through narrow corridors, over stairwells, and into the observation towers. Each move Kale made relied not on technology alone, but on human ingenuity, speed, and unpredictability. Finally, they confronted each other in a wide chamber overlooking the city. The assassin struck with deadly precision, but Kale reacted instinctively, deflecting attacks and using the environment to his advantage. Using a combination of martial skill and clever improvisation, he disarmed the assassin and pinned him to the floor. Breathing heavily, Kale looked down at the subdued figure. The assassin's pride and confidence were shattered. Kale had done the impossible. He had protected the Queen and the palace with nothing but human determination and skill. When the dust settled, the queen entered the chamber, flanked by palace guards. She regarded Kale with an expression that was both solemn and proud. "You have done more than I could have expected," she said. "You have not only saved lives, but you have demonstrated something the galaxy has long ignored. Humans are capable of courage, ingenuity, and strength beyond measure." Kale nodded silently, aware that his actions had shifted perceptions not just of him, but of his species. Humans were no longer seen as weak or expendable. They were now a force to be reckoned with, unpredictable and formidable. Later, in the quiet of his quarters, Kale reflected on the events. He had faced danger head-on, relying on instincts and improvisation that no alien could anticipate. He had proven the truth of human resilience, that even in the face of overwhelming odds, humans could survive, adapt, and triumph. And yet, he knew the Queen's decree remained. He could not leave the palace freely. His life was now tied to the royal family, to their safety, and to the politics of a galaxy that had long dismissed humanity. But Kale accepted this as a challenge, not a burden.
Humans thrived under pressure.
They grew stronger when constrained, and he would continue to prove that wherever the galaxy dared to underestimate him. Kale understood now that his role was greater than he had imagined. He was not just a soldier. He was a symbol, a human, in a world that had overlooked his species, showing that courage, intellect, and unpredictability were forces that could not be contained. And as the stars shimmered beyond the palace windows, Kale knew one truth: humans could change the course of events, and nothing, not even an empire, could take that away from them. The palace had never felt quieter. Days after the failed assassination, the corridors echoed with the footsteps of guards and the soft hum of energy fields. Yet the air carried a tension that Kale could feel even in his bones. He had saved the queen, protected the princess, and shown the palace and its visitors that humans were more than they had ever imagined. And yet, despite his victories, he remained confined within the palace walls. Empress Solara summoned him to her private chamber. The room was dimly lit, adorned with star maps and holographic projections of distant systems. She stood tall and regal, her eyes reflecting the calm of someone who had survived countless political storms. "Kale," she began, her voice steady, "you have done what few could.
You have acted with courage, foresight, and skill beyond expectation. You have saved my life and protected the Empire's heart."
She paused, letting her words settle. "And yet you remain human, free in body, but constrained in duty."
"I must ask something of you."
But Kale stood at attention, sensing the gravity of the moment.
"Anything, Your Majesty."
Solara's gaze sharpened. "I cannot let you leave the palace. Not yet. The galaxy underestimates humans. Your species' resilience, courage, and ingenuity are exceptional, and they must not be wasted. You will remain here to train and guide others, to ensure that House Veyron and our allies understand what humans can achieve. You will become a symbol, not just for my court, but for the galaxy itself."
Kale felt a surge of conflicting emotions.
He had faced countless dangers, defied expectations, and proven himself beyond measure. And yet, the Queen's decree was absolute. His freedom was limited. Humans valued freedom above all else, but he also knew the truth in her words. His skills, instincts, and ingenuity were invaluable, not just for the palace, but for the galaxy.
"I understand, Your Majesty," Kale said, bowing slightly. "If my presence here strengthens the Empire and protects lives, then I accept this responsibility."
"Good. You do not take this lightly, and that is why I trust you. Remember, human, your value is not only in your strength, but in your unpredictability. That is a weapon few can match." Kale nodded, his mind already turning to the work ahead. He would train guards, strategize defenses, and prepare for threats that no one else could foresee. He was confined in body, yes, but his influence would extend far beyond the palace walls. humans thrived when faced with limitations, transforming constraints into advantages. In the following weeks, Kale's training sessions began. He worked with the palace guards, teaching them to anticipate attacks, recognize subtle signs of danger, and adapt quickly to unexpected situations. He introduced improvisation techniques, using everyday objects as defensive tools, and emphasized the value of instinct over rigid protocol. Some guards were skeptical at first, particularly those of alien species accustomed to strict rules and procedures. But Kale's results were undeniable. They saw their effectiveness increase, their confidence grow, and they began to respect him not only for his skill, but for his unique human perspective. Princess Lyra observed these sessions often. She asked questions, offered suggestions, and sometimes tested the techniques herself. Kale appreciated her involvement, recognizing that she understood the subtle truth of humanity. Strength was more than muscle or technology. It was adaptability, courage, and the will to act when others hesitated. One evening, Kale was reviewing security reports when an urgent alert flashed on his console. A fleet of ships previously untracked was approaching the palace. Kale's instincts kicked in immediately. He studied their trajectories, predicted likely boarding points, and prepared contingency plans. The palace guards were ready, but Kale knew that no procedure could anticipate every human-like decision in the chaos to come. He would have to rely on intuition, improvisation, and courage. The attackers struck under the cover of a nebula, their ships moving in silence toward the orbital platform. Boarding pods were deployed, and a group of elite mercenaries attempted to breach the palace gates. Kale moved swiftly, coordinating with the guards while simultaneously positioning himself where the enemy would least expect. The first wave of attackers met resistance immediately. Kale's training had transformed the palace guards into a disciplined, adaptive force. They moved as one, anticipating the attackers' moves, guided by his teachings. Still, Kale knew that the enemy's elite force could not be stopped by training alone. He acted decisively, intercepting squads, using the palace layout to his advantage, and improvising tools to disable the intruders. The central corridors became a battlefield. Plasma bolts and energy shields clashed, alarms blared, and chaos erupted. Yet amidst it all, Kale's calm precision allowed him to predict enemy movements and act before they could react. He disarmed, subdued, and redirected attacks in a way that no alien tactics could anticipate. Each success reinforced what everyone in the palace was beginning to understand. Humans were extraordinary in their unpredictability. Finally, Kale reached the lead operative, the commander of the assault. This adversary was trained, fast, and ruthless, but he had not accounted for human ingenuity. Kale anticipated the first strike, deflected it using a structural beam, and used momentum to unbalance the enemy. The fight moved across a wide observation deck, overlooking the swirling stars. Every action Kale took was calculated, instinctive, and adaptable. In the final moment, Kale used the environment itself as a weapon. A panel beneath the enemy's feet released, tipping him into a containment field designed for experimental energy storage. The attackers struggled, but it was useless. Kale had neutralized the threat, relying on instinct, intelligence, and improvisation rather than brute force alone. The queen arrived shortly after, flanked by the palace guard. Her expression held a mixture of relief, admiration, and resolve. Kale, once again you have proven the value of humans, not merely for their strength, but for their courage, intelligence, and adaptability. The galaxy has much to learn from your species. Kale, breathing heavily, nodded.
I only act, Your Majesty. Humans do what they must to survive.
That is all.
Solara's gaze softened slightly. And yet, what you do changes the course of events.
You are more than a soldier. You are a symbol. And now, human, it is time for you to understand fully why you remain here. Kaya listened as the queen explained her vision. Humanity, often underestimated, had qualities that could shape the future of the empire. By staying, by training others, and by demonstrating human resilience, Kyle would serve as a bridge between species, showing that courage, ingenuity, and adaptability were forces that no alien army or machine could predict or contain. He had faced countless dangers, protected lives, and now understood that freedom was not always measured in the ability to leave a place. Freedom could also be measured in the ability to act decisively, influence events, and prove the value of a species in the galaxy. In the weeks that followed, Kale's influence expanded. Guards trained under his guidance became adept at improvisation, strategy, and rapid response. Princess Lyra continued to learn from him, observing the human mind in action and absorbing lessons that would make her a wise and prepared leader. The palace itself became a fortress not only of walls and shields, but of intelligence, adaptability, and vigilance, all inspired by a single human soldier who had refused to yield. Kale also began to document his methods. He wrote guides for combat, strategy, and improvisation, blending human instinct with alien technology in ways that others could understand. His influence spread quietly, subtly shaping the future of the palace and the perception of humans throughout the Empire. Aliens began to speak of humans with a mixture of awe and respect, recognizing that they were unpredictable, resourceful, and formidable. Despite the growing admiration, Kale never let it affect his humility. He remained focused on the work at hand, protecting the Queen, guiding the guards, and preparing for threats that would inevitably come. Every patrol, every training session, every observation was a reminder that humans thrived under pressure and that their value could not be measured by appearances alone. One evening, as he stood on the palace balcony looking out at the stars, Kale felt a quiet satisfaction. He could not leave the palace freely, and yet he had never felt more alive. His actions, his choices, and his courage had made a difference. He had proven to the Queen, the Princess, and the galaxy that humans were more than capable of shaping events, even against impossible odds. Princess Lyra approached, standing beside him silently. She looked at him with respect and gratitude.
You have done more than protect us, Kale. You have shown what humans are truly capable of.
The galaxy will never underestimate us again. Kale nodded. We survive, we adapt. We act when others hesitate. That is all humans have ever done, and it is enough. Selara's words echoed in his mind. Humans were not merely soldiers. They were symbols of courage, ingenuity, and unpredictability, and Kale had proven that in the harshest way possible. The Queen had bound him to the palace, but in doing so, she had also given him a platform to demonstrate the value of his species. As the stars stretched endlessly before him, Kale understood that his story was only the beginning. Humans were underestimated, yes, but that would never last again. In every challenge, every danger, every battle to come, humans would rise, and he would be there, leading by example, proving that courage, intelligence, and determination could shape the fate of an empire. The palace no longer felt like a cage. It was a stage, a proving ground, and a place where Kale's human spirit could shine. And in the quiet of the night, watching the stars spin silently in the vastness of space, Kale smiled. He had faced the attack meant for the princess. He had survived, and now he would continue to show the galaxy the strength of humanity. For Kale, for humans, and for the future, nothing could stop them. Not walls, not machines, not even the expectations of others.